Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was a player of League of Legends. Meet Naruto Uzumaki, a not-so-regular teen with a passion for the MOBA game League of Legends even though he sucked at it. His life was normal until he was introduced to the supernatural world and found out he had an irregular sacred gear. So, the problem? How should he fend off Amano Yuma? With Lucian's relic pistols? There are so many choices. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 17. It was the day after the Battle of Kuo Academy. Reinforcements of the Mao had arrived shortly after the battle was over, but there wasn't much for them to do besides taking care of the injuries and taking reports of what happened from them. Naruto, who had fought Kokobile half of the time while merging with Anivia, gaining the self-regeneration power of a phoenix, was the only one beside Asia that did not have any injuries because he healed up immediately after being hit. Ari had also returned to Runeterra shortly after she had made sure that Asia was stable, with a promise of finishing her works at Bilgewater very soon to come and live with him in his house. It had been then revealed that Graphia had been teleported to an area near the border of the underworld, close to a place that was known as the Realm of the Dead ruled by the Greek god Hades. There, she had been held back by a combined force of Kokobile's fallen angels followers and rogue Grim Reapers, though it was not something the silver-haired Queen of Annihilation couldn't have handled. She had defeated all of them to break out of the barriers that Kokobile had created to contain her and slow her process of returning to Kuo, where she had apologized to him and Rias for not being able to get to them sooner, but after what she had done back at home, shielding his mother and Asia from the blast of Kokobile's first attack, which had also been the only reason the cadre could have teleported her away without her not being able to get out his teleportation magic circle. Naruto couldn't really bring himself to be angry at her, not in the slightest, just like his master. His house had been rebuilt, and to make sure that his mother wouldn't remember anything of the horrifying experience, they had let Graphia take care of her with a memory-altering spell. It was fortunate that his father was on a business trip that day and wouldn't return till the end of the week, or else they would have to do the same thing to him, as much as Naruto wanted to tell his parents the truth, though he was also aware that one day that he would have to do so. It's just that it hadn't been a good time to make that kind of decision. Kuo Academy had also been completely rebuilt in the same night, but not by the devils. Naruto had heard a rumor that it was the Fallen who had rebuilt it as a means of reparations towards Sona and Rias for Kokobile's actions. Currently the academy was where Naruto found himself, with him finding his way to the new clubroom of the Occult Research Club. Fighting and winning a life and death battle did not mean that he could skip school the day after, not when the president of the student council was someone like Sona Citri. "Hey, Naruto Uzumaki." Catching a familiar voice when he walked into the clubroom, Naruto turned his head and widened his eyes when he saw the exorcist Zenovia waving her hand at him while sitting on the couch with Rias and the others, wearing the Kuo Academy's school uniform for girls. Why are you still here?" The blonde couldn't help but ask in surprise, but with no other hard feeling, not after the battle they had fought together. "And why are you wearing our school uniform?" Zenovia then looked at Rias, and she clicked her fingers, making a pair of devil wings appear on the blue-haired girl's back. "You see, I found out that God is gone, so I made the decision to become a devil like a self-forsaken. It seems that I am not as valuable as Durandal is, so I was able to become a devil with just a night piece. As of now, I am a second-year student and also a member of the club. Having the Durandal wielder sure make me feel more confident." Rias started with a smile. "With that, we now have 2 swordsmen in our group, together with Yuto." "I see." Naruto nodded his head in understanding, and then summoned Yumi, allowing his feline familiar and her companion to float over to Kaneko, who had prepared a lot of snacks to share. "But are you sure about this? I mean, there's no going back once you have been reincarnated, you know." "Yes. I know that I am a demon now." Zenovia answered his statement, "But maybe that was a good thing, serving under a devil who was once my enemy, and not to mention that she is also the sister of Amao. In any case, if you don't mind me asking, Where's Irina Shiddu? I thought you came back with her. Irina returned to headquarters this morning, along with Valper's corpse and the Excalibur broken fragments. Our mission to recover was accomplished, even though the Excalibur was broken again, but if they have the pieces, they can use alchemy to make new Excalibur holy swords again. Zenobia explained with a sigh. I also have to return Excalibur Destruction and let Irina take it back. Unlike Durandal, which has chosen me as its wielder, they can choose others to wield the swords once they have been taken back. Having Durandal is enough for me. Don't they want you back? Naruto asked as he sat down next to Asia and grabbed a cup of tea. You are the wielder of Durandal after all, so you must be very valuable to them. Not after what I have discovered. Zenobia shook her head and explained that to him when I mentioned the death of God to them, they went silent. I became an outsider because I knew of his death, and it is an understatement to say that the church hates outsiders and heresy very much. Even if that person is the bearer of Durandal, they will cut them off without mercy, in exactly the same way as the Asia Argento incident. Even though she is a holy maiden and her sacred gear Twilight Healing isn't something that you can come around every day. Irina was lucky. The blue-haired girl continued with a small, somewhat sad laugh, because she wasn't fighting with us on the battlefield because of her injuries. She ended up not knowing the truth. She has a stronger belief than I do. If she found out about God, I don't know what would have happened to her. Naruto could understand that, instinctively glancing over to Asia, who had gotten somewhat better. Even though she had chosen to become a devil, Asia still believed in God and prayed to him, no matter how many painful headaches praying brought her. And like the blonde, Naruto could see that Irina seemed to have a very firm belief in God, so it would have been very painful for her if she had discovered the truth that night. In the worst case, they would take it that their whole life had been rejected. Oh well, she was really disappointed that I chose to become a devil, so we had difficulty saying goodbye to each other. Perhaps we would be enemies the next time we meet. Zenobia said as she narrowed her eyes. Ah yes, about that. Rias began, speaking up after she had confirmed that every member of her club was present. The church, representing heaven, has made contact with us devils, more precisely the Mao that have relationships with the ones who were involved in this accident. The truth about this incident had been to the leaders of the three factions. The thieving of Excaliburs and war declaration were both actions taken by Kokobile only. So, the other leaders of Grigori, mostly Azazel, did not know anything about it. Moreover, Azazel seems to want to finally break the tension between the three sides. Gotta admit that fallen angel guy is awfully misinformed, first Rainier and now Kokobile. Naruto muttered distastefully before continuing. What happened to Kokobile, by the way? I hope that the Fallen didn't let him off the hook that easily. You don't have to worry about that, Naruto. Rias shook her head and said with a small smile, because he tried to start another great war, he was placed in Cocytus for eternity in a frozen state. Sound like what the Freljordians did to the Watchers to prevent them from starting another void invasion. Naruto said, and when he saw the look of confusion everyone, Rias and Kaneko was giving him, he added with a sheepish chuckle, League's lore, don't worry about it. Nonetheless, there will be a meeting between representatives of angels, devils, and fallen angels very soon. Apparently, there is something Azazel wants to talk about, but I doubt that it's an apology for Kokobile's action. Rias continued with a shrug. We, along with the Citri group, are invited to this meeting. We have to report the incident because we were involved. Whoa, you serious? Naruto wasn't the only one who was surprised by Rias' words, as everyone around the room had an expression of shock on their faces. Naruto, I want you to be very careful when you meet him. Rias continued as she turned her head over to look at Naruto. The leader of the fallen angel is gathering people who have Longinustir's sacred gear. No one knows what he is thinking, but it is definitely something that is not good. Yours isn't one of the 13 Longinus, but no one has ever seen or heard of it before, and its potential is as great if not even greater than the top tier 3, so surely that he will take an interest in you. When you say it like that, it sounds like he wants to cut me open to study me like the scientists in those sci-fi movies. Don't worry Naruto-kun, I will protect you. Kiba Yuto spoke up from his position, raising his hand while having a big smile on his face. It appeared that he had returned to his old self, even though they couldn't completely destroy the Excaliburs and had to let them get taken back to the church. It was a good thing that Kiba had chosen to leave his need for revenge behind him. Yes, there's no way in hell that we are going to let something like that happen to you, Naruto. Rias declared determinedly, making Naruto grin at her and the rest of the club as they wholeheartedly supported the idea. Alright, I think that's enough politics for today. It's about time we start our club activity again. Yeah. The Occult Research Club replied to their president with an energetic voice. Naruto was about to invite Asia for a rank game, when suddenly Zenovia walked toward her and tapped her lightly on the shoulder, gaining her attention. Asia Argento, I would like to apologize to you for saying those ugly things and for trying to kill you. She began, making Asia's green eyes widen in surprise since God does not exist anymore, then his love and help did not do so well. I'm sorry, Asia. If you want to hit me, do as much as you want. The former exorcist finished, bowing her head down in a way of apologizing. Her expression hadn't changed even a bit, so it was hard to tell whether she truly meant it or not. No, it's all right, Zenovia-san. Asia said while waving her hand at the taller girl, I don't really care about any of that, really. I'm having fun with my current lifestyle, even though I am a devil now. I have met someone, people who are important to me. I am happy because of the place I live in now and the people I met. I see, you are really the holy maiden, Asia Argento. Zenovia nodded her head with a glimpse of sadness in Zenovia's eyes before she gave Asia a small smile and turned around to leave. There are some other things that I need to know before finish transferring to this school, so if you excuse me I will have to take my leave for now. You. Before the girl could leave the room, however, Asia had reached out to her and said with an unsure smile the next weekend, I'm going out to head out to play with my friends in class. Would you like to go too, Zenovia-san? Zenovia's eyes widened in shock and then smiled bitterly. How about next time? This time I'm not interested. Except. Zenovia then told it to Asia with a warm smile. Can you take me around the school next time? Yes. Asia replied with a brilliant smile. With that, Zenovia turned her head over to look at Kiba and told him with a strong look in her eyes, in the name of my holy sword, Durandal, I would also like to have a battle with the holy demonic sword user again. All right then. Kiba smiled fearlessly back at his fellow knight, before replying as Zenovia took her leave from their clubroom, I will not lose to you. Naruto couldn't help but smile at that. It appeared that Zenovia would fit right in with their group. Break. Ding. Dong. I got it. Naruto spoke loudly so everyone in the house could hear, putting the bowl of potato chips down before standing up and making his way out of the living room to answer the doorbell. Uzumaki-san, I presume? A middle-aged man asked when Naruto opened the door, revealing himself to be a delivery man with a clinical package wrapped in black wrapping paper. I have a delivery for you, sign here please. The delivery man instructed, handing out an electronic pad and pen for a confused Naruto, who did what he was told before receiving the package. Closing the door behind him, Naruto then used a finger to tear the wrapping paper down to see what was inside. He didn't remember ordering anything the past couple of days. What he saw inside almost made him drop the package. Ah, I believe that's mine, said a voice from the second floor, and Naruto looked up to see Evelyn skipping down the stairs while humming a soft tune. She wasn't wearing her scanty maid outfit, but that did not mean she wasn't particularly naked. Thank you, she said and tried to snatch the package from his hand, but Naruto beat her to it by holding the thing up in the air out of her arm reach. Hey, what are you doing? Give me that, she said with an annoyed expression, reaching up and trying to take it from him. How did you get this with my name on it? Did you use my credit card? Yes, I did. You had a shitton of money, so why bother? The Demoness asked in annoyance. Because you used my credit card to buy a dildo. He told her pointedly, not knowing how to properly react to the whole ordeal. I mean, seriously, where did you even get it? And for what? Did you buy it online? Where did you even learn how to use the internet? Instead of answering his question, Evelyn shot her hand out and grabbed his crotch, squeezing his family jewels so hard that it made Naruto cry out in pain before dropping the package, allowing the ancient Demoness to grab it in the air before sending him stumbling on the floor with a push. Don't try to take what is mine, Han, or I won't be so gentle next time. Evelyn smirked and told him while rubbing his crotch with her left foot, making Naruto glare up at her. If that's all, then I will return to my room now. See you tomorrow. Wait. Naruto called out before she could leave, making Evelyn turn her head around to look at him. Can I talk to you for a sec? Sure. Not here, let's go to my room or something. Naruto said and quickly stood up when he saw parents poking their heads out to see what's going on, before quickly making his way to the second floor of his home, making a gesture with his hand for her to follow him. The Demoness did just that, walking into his room with him, and letting him close the door behind her after turning the light on. Nice room. Evelyn commented after taking a good look around before looking at him. So what's up? Finally decide to give in to your desire and have some fun with me? She asked in a seductive tone while moving closer to him, with her state of clothing working to her advantage. If so, then there's no need for the dildo. I will ask the shop for a refund. No, not that. He held up his hands and put them on Evelyn's shoulders to put her back, but that did not stop her from reaching her hand into his pants and starting to do wonderful things to his manhood, to the point that he became fully erect. I want to talk about other things. It's about yesterday's night. What about it? Can you take your hand back first, please? Don't get it wrong. What she was doing to him feel really, really amazing. The way her hand was moving, how she was stroking and tugging on his length, but it was distracting, and now was not the time for it. When I found out there was a 17-year-old summoner, I thought you would be more fun than those old geezers at the institute. With that said, Evelyn gave him a firm squeeze before she took her hand back and walked over to his bed to lay down, as sticking up. So, what do you want to talk about? Comfortable bed, by the way. Thank you. Naruto did his best to calm down before saying, sitting down on the bed so that he could hide his lurching erection, I saw how you were protecting my mother when Kokobile attacked our house last night. Ah, so noticed. Yes, and I am very grateful. Naruto said with a genuine smile. He had doubted it at first, and he guiltily admitted it, almost convincing himself to believe that she had somehow fallen on top with his mother when the explosion occurred. But when he asked Graphia, she had told him that Evelyn had noticed the presence of Kokobile almost as soon as she did, and pushed his mother behind her to use her body to protect Kushina from his attack, saving her from getting badly injured before Graphia could finish casting her spell. If it wasn't for her, his mother wouldn't have just gotten knocked out with a few scratches on her cheeks. To tell you the truth, I did not expect something like that from you. Naruto said, admitting honestly to the Demoness, who finally turned to look at him. I must admit that I have been too judgmental. Kinda hard not to with how my story in that online game of yours portrays as an evil incarnation, isn't it? Evelyn asked, resting her head on her arm as she turned to her side and supporting herself on her elbow. It is. Naruto said before he decided to ask her, gesturing his hands toward the busted Demoness. Evelyn, why were you? I mean, the way you are right now? Oh, so you want to know how I came to this sexy form of mine? She asked, smiling seductively as she reached her hand down and pulled her ultra-short miniskirt up to show him what's underneath, but only for a second before she said, smiling genuinely for the first time, because that's all I can remember. I start out as something barely sentient, and I would have remained that way if the Rune Wars didn't give me the chance to see the pain and anguish of humans, and those feelings excited me. They gave me reasons to become more than what I was, and I became the demon that you saw here on your bed. So, if you have other reasons to live for, will you change? I don't know, but I guess we will see. To tell you the truth, I'm bored of life in Runeterra, of how I have lived my life the past 15,000 years. I have done everything, seen everything, tried everything and even fucked everything. You get the idea. Naruto couldn't stop himself from sweat dropping at that. So yeah, I wanted a change in life, that's why I asked you to take me in, to see if I can find something else fun to do in this world of yours. Your mother, as hot-headed as she is, isn't so bad, that's why I tried to protect her. I see. Naruto nodded his head in understanding, smiling at her. You have no idea how happy I am to hear that. Though, since I still like to torture people, remember our deal about letting me mess with your enemy. I would have loved to get my hand on that black-winged pointed ears fuckface, if you ask me. After what he tried to do, yeah, I think they should have given him over to you. Naruto grinned, for once he didn't dislike the idea. See, told you that you would meet enemies you want to suffer a fate worse than death. Evelyn smiled before she got up on all four and leaned her face toward him. So, do I get a reward for protecting your dear mother? Didn't you already use my credit card to buy a fucking dildo? Naruto asked with a deadpan expression as he gestured toward the unwrapped box on the bed. Considering the money your reward? No chance, I want sex. Can you please speak about it a bit more seriously? Plus, we are not that close. Come on, don't you want to relieve yourself just a little? Evelyn asked with a playful smile before latching onto Naruto from the side, wrapping her slender arms around his neck and rubbing herself against him, her very large breasts pushing against his arm. Don't worry about anything. I will make sure that you have a wonderful time. With that said, she leaned forward and nibbled sexually on his earlobe, hand returning to the underneath of his pants before he could stop her. If only you are as honest as you're not so little. Before she could finish that, the door of his room was forced open, revealing a rather annoyed Rias Gremory and a teary-eyed Asia Argento, both of whom were looking directly at Naruto and Evelyn, whose smirk widened sadistically as her hand moved furiously in his pants. It seemed that those peaceful days that he could just spend his free time playing League was long gone. Chapter 18. 3 months. It had been 3 months since the day Naruto became a devil, 2 weeks after the Battle of Koa Academy. In all truths, not much had changed for him during that time. For the most part, his life had been relatively peaceful, falling into a slow, but satisfying if not sometimes difficult routine, with the amount of intense training his masters had been putting him through. He now had 2 jobs, sort of. The first of course being a devil. Over the past few weeks, he had been able to sign several long-term contracts with his human clients, taking all the requests that they had for him, ranging from the normal household chores to the ones like acting as a butler for the younger girls, or spending times talking to people who had accumulated stress from their jobs. Naruto wouldn't call himself an expert in handling most of other people's problems, but he had his champions, several of whom were some of the wisest and smartest individuals of their world, to help him with them. Aside from the everyday devil jobs, being a devil servant of Rias Gremory also meant that there were the occasional stray devils hunts. However, with their recent accomplishment in defeating Kokobile and his fallen followers, not that many stray devils were stupid enough to wander into or try to take resident in their town anymore, leaving Koa a stray devil-free town for the first time in a long time. The other job he had was not so much of a job, but it gave him no less enjoyment than being a devil, and it was being the unofficial landlord of Uzumaki Household, charitable home for homeless champions of the League, as Evelyn had put it. Technically, his parents were the ones who had that right. "Ah, good morning, Naruto," greeted a beautiful woman with shoulder-length black hair wearing a soft navy blue cotton sleep shorts and black tank, flaunting her slender, but incredibly well-endowed body, as she stood near the kitchen counter with one hand on the coffee machine. "Coffee? I will have a cup." "Thanks, Ari." Naruto grinned, accepting the cup of hot coffee from his Vastayan champion, who gave him a playful wink before she walked away with her own cup, tail wagging behind her as her round as swayed seductively with each step, like a glorious sculpture, firm and nearly artistic against the silk material of her short as it curved down into her shapely thighs and long legs, giving him such a good view that Naruto didn't bother to force himself to look away. "Like what you see?" Having gotten used to having Evelyn appearing randomly from nowhere to tease him, Naruto wasn't surprised when he heard her all too familiar seductive voice that was in a whisper right next to his ear. "Good morning to you too, Evelyn," Naruto greeted while casually taking a sip from his coffee as he turned to the side to face the ancient demon of pain, Evelyn, who had an amused and flirtatious smile on her face as she stood dangerously close to him with her arms crossing under her incredibly large breasts, being barely hidden behind a scanty top. "Fancy seeing you up so early in the morning. Is there any particular reason for you to be here and not in your evil lair watching BDSM porn? Which I'd love to try with you one day." Evelyn winked, before she pointed over to the refrigerator, which had a note pinned on it: "Graphia won't be coming back till 8, so I will be in charge of making breakfast today." "Great, then we will be counting on you to deliver," Naruto said, grinning widely. Unless she suddenly decided to poison the foods, he had no complaints. He loved his mother's cooking, just as much as he loved Rias and Graphia's foods, but Evelyn was hand down the best cook in the house. She really wasn't kidding when she said that she had tried to do everything, with cooking definitely being one of them. "You know I always deliver." Evelyn gave him a wink before she walked past him, making her way further into the kitchen before waving a dismissed hand at him. "Now shoo, unless you want to jerk off here, or have kitchen counter sex with me, which I'm all for, by the way." With that, she swung her hand around and smashed her left buttock, making it jiggle enticingly in front of him before she grabbed the whole thing and pulled it to the side with a teasing smile while biting the corner of her bottom lip. Naruto could see why she and Ari were best friends. The two of them knew just how to drive men, especially hormonal teenagers like him, crazy. However, at least Ari knew modesty and how to behave like a normal young woman, and didn't act like a horny slut for the majority of her times of the day. Their relationship sure had improved a lot, and Naruto no longer felt wary of her, but that still didn't stop her from trying to have rough, hardcore sex with him. "Oh, by the way, if you are heading out to see the Tin Can Man, tell him to stop spoiling his oil on the floor, or else I will make sure that the only thing that he can use to replace his ripped-apart torso is the old washing machine in the basement," Evelyn shouted after him, her tone lacking the usual flirtatiousness. In all honesty, she sounded quite annoyed and angry. "It took me hours to clean up his mess last night." "Don't worry, I'll tell him," Naruto answered back with an amused smile before taking another drink from his coffee and starting to make his way out of the house, where he could see a 7-feet-tall robot pushing a lawn mower on the front yard of his house with his extra-large hands, releasing steams and cracks of electricity with each quick but heavy step he took. With Japan being the land of rising robotic technology, it wasn't that difficult for Naruto to convince his parents, as well as their neighbors, to believe that Blitzcrank was just an ordinary robot morning blitz. Naruto waved his hand at the great steam golem, who turned his head and raised a hand to wave back at him. "I take that you heard what Evelyn just said." "Sorry," Blitzcrank answered apologetically in his deep robotic voice. "It's cool. Don't worry about it, Blitz." Naruto grinned with a meaningful wink toward the steam robot while waving a hand in front of his face before he asked, "By the way, where's the other gardener?" The robot turned around and pointed a hand toward the garden, making Naruto turn his head to look and find the infamous Yasuo, the Unforgiven, pruning the new bonsai trees carefully and expertly with a pair of scissors. His face was calm and relaxed, even after catching the rock Naruto threw at him with the tips of his index and middle fingers without even looking. Chuckling, Naruto finished his coffee and turned around to make his way back into the house, leaving Blitzcrank and Yasuo, who both had moved into his house about a week ago with Ari, to their works. Later that day, Saturday, was the only time of the week that Naruto spent his whole day working as a devil. Even though daytime devil jobs were rare even for his master, he did have a few clients whose wishes required him to come in the morning, for example the housewives that needed someone to help them with the shopping for their families, or the ones who wanted something done before dark. Nevertheless, today Naruto was out working, and almost as soon as he had activated the teleportation magic circle in his room, he had gotten a summoning request from a new client. With Yumi riding on his shoulder, and Book floating just a bit behind his head, Naruto arrived at that person's home in a flash of red light. The client wasn't around, so Naruto took a second to look around the room, seeing many high-class furniture, a clean and polished floor with a number of soft rugs. A chandelier hanging down from the ceiling, above a set of luxury couches and table, in front of a giant flat-screen TV, which was even larger than the one in the living room of his house. Whoever that just summoned him, they appeared to be quite wealthy. "Ah, you must be the devil mentioned in the contract. Welcome, welcome," said a voice coming from what appeared to be a kitchen, before a tall man wearing a teal-colored yukata walked out with a huge smile on his face. He appeared to be in his 20s, with a somewhat average build, black hair, golden bangs, and black goatee. The moment Naruto saw him, however, he couldn't help but feel that something was off about him. "Good morning," Naruto greeted, keeping his tone calm and friendly, and then introduced himself. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, a devil of the Gremory House." He then gestured his hand over to Yumi before continuing, "These are my friends and familiar, Yumi, and her companion, Book of Threshold. Greeting, pleased to meet you all." With that, they shook hands, with Yumi raising a paw up to greet their client before he gestured his hand over to the couch. "Have a seat. Would you like to have some tea? I'm actually making it in the kitchen." "Sure." Naruto smiled, and took a seat on the couch with Yumi as his client turned around to make his way back into the kitchen, without so much of introducing himself or even giving him a name, something that Naruto had taken notice. As soon as the man had left, Yumi leaned over and asked him in a low tone, "Naruto, don't you think there's something fishy about him? And I don't mean it in the good way." Naruto nodded his head in agreement. "Yeah, and he didn't look surprised when he saw you. We don't have many clients like that, do we? Now, there's no need to act so suspicious," said the client as he walked back into the room with a teapot in his hand. "I mean you no harm. I'm back, Azazel-sama." But before he could finish, the front door was opened and Naruto turned his head to see a very familiar black-haired young woman walk in. She had violet eyes, a slender body, but with a very large bust, and long silky black hair that went down to her hips. Her attire consisted of a short black dress with a small, light purple jacket on top. "Ah, it's you." Naruto pointed his hand at her and uttered in surprise, recognizing the girl almost immediately as she stared at him with eyes as wide as dinner plates, looking quite taken aback by his presence. "What's your name again?" Rainier, is it?" Naruto then widened his eyes in realization, remembering the name she had used to address the man with as he slowly turned his head to look at him. "Oh yeah, I forgot to properly introduce myself, didn't I?" the man asked while rubbing the back of his head, before turning fully over to Naruto with a wide grin. At that instant, 12 black wings grew on his back, having the color of pitch-black darkness, a shade that was even darker than that of Kokobeel's. "My name is Azazel, and I am the Governor-General of the Fallen Angels in Gregory. Pleased to make you acquaintance, Naruto Uzumaki Koen. Drake." "So, after that, Azazel asked you to show him how to play a game of League. That's it?" Naruto nodded his head in confirmation as his master's words. The two of them were at school with the rest of the Occult Research Club. It's Wednesday, so they were at school to do their assigned classroom cleanup duties the student council had given them earlier on that week. "I see. Although it's decided that the meeting of the leaders of the 3 factions would be held in this city, to think the governor of the Fallen Angels would show up so suddenly in our town without us knowing like that. Did he try to do anything to you, Naruto?" she asked, looking both worried and annoyed. "I don't think so, but he did look at Yumi with a magnifying glass-like object. She didn't like it, but I don't think he cared," Naruto answered, looking down at the cat who was currently laying on his lap, napping soundly after she had stuffed her stomach full of the fishes the Azazel had given Naruto as payment for his service. Usually, he would have negotiated with his clients for cash, since he was saving money for a trip to Iceland to watch the most second important International League of Legends tournament, the Mid-Season Invitational, MSI, in Iceland this summer, but decided not to and took his leave as quickly as he could. "He's indeed very interested in my sacred gear. Asked a lot of questions about it too. I heard that Azazel had a deep knowledge about sacred gear. That's true, so if there's anyone who can help you understand more about your Runeterra arsenal, it's probably him, Naruto Uzumaki Koen. Suddenly, they all heard a voice, and everyone in the Occult Research Club turned their heads to see a finely dressed handsome man who seemed to be in his early 20s walking into the room with Graphia holding the door for him. He has shoulder-length crimson-red hair and blue-green eyes, similar to Rias, and in fact, his facial features made Naruto think of him as a male version of his master, who had stood up and looked at him with her eyes widening in surprise. "Oh, Oni-sama!" Rias let out a surprised voice as Akino and the others got on their knees to respectfully greet the crimson-haired man. Asia and Zenovia both had confused expressions on their faces, not knowing how to deal with the situation. Like them, Naruto wasn't bowing, but it was because of Yumi. Unlike Azazel, it was quite easy for him to figure out who he was, with just how much he looked like Rias, and having Graphia accompanied him. "Please relax, I just came for private business today." Telling that to them, allowing Akino and the others to raise their heads, Sir Zex then continued while looking around the room, having an amused smile on his face as he said, "Hey, Rias-chan, don't you think that this room looks a bit like a cult gathering place? With all those magic circles, strange symbols and rebellious teenagers?" "Oni-sama, what are you doing here?" Rias crossed her arms and asked doubtfully. Sir Zex Lucifer merely smiled before he handed over a letter. "What are you saying?" he asked with a wide grin. "Class visit is coming in a few days, right? I am also thinking of participating. I want to see my sister working hard at school up close." Now that he mentioned it, Naruto would have forgotten about that two of his parents hadn't been talking about it all week. Personally, Naruto didn't mind having his parents around when he was in classes since the two of them had been really looking forward to seeing how he and Asia were both doing, with his mother being the one attending for Asia and his father for him. "Graphia, right? Are you the only one who gave that to my brother?" "Yes, the letters arrived yesterday, so I decided to give them to Sir Zex-sama and your parents." The silver-haired maid calmly said, "Of course, as a servant of the House of Gremory and assistant of Lord Lucifer, I report everything to my masters." After hearing that, Rias let out a sigh. There's no way that she could argue with such logic, from Graphia no less. "Even though I have my duties as Mao, I want to participate in my little sister's class visit, so I decided to take a day off from work," Sir Zex said with a smile, placing a hand on his sister's shoulder. "Oh, by the way, our father will also come." Hearing that, Rias looked deeply troubled. "That is not true, isn't it, Oni-sama? You of all people should know better than anyone that a Mao cannot play favorite with a specific devil. It's not okay." She told him, but Naruto had a feeling that it wasn't the only reason Rias didn't want her brother to come see her on class visit day. Also, with someone like Graphia working as his assistant, even though her main job nowadays was to supervise him, Naruto had a feeling that she wouldn't let her master skip work that easily to come and see his sister. There must be another reason. No, of course not." Sir Zex shook his head and answered, "This is actually my job too, Rias. The conference between the three factions will be held at this school, so I am also here to inspect the meeting place." "Wait, here?" Rias asked in shock, and around the room her servants shared the same feeling. We all have agreed that this school seems to have a destiny attached to it. You, the younger sister of Seraphol, the legendary Sekur-Utii, the creator of the holy demonic sword, bearer of the legendary holy sword Durandal, and the holder of a brand new type of sacred gear," Sir Zex said, nodding his head to Naruto before continuing to his sister. "This is a phenomenon that cannot be labeled as a coincidence." "I see," Rias said unsurely, nodding her head in understanding before she sat back down on the couch, and allowed her brother to walk further into the room and greet each of his sister's servants one by one. When it was Zenovia's turn, the blue-haired girl was the one who made the first move, walking toward Sir Zex with a curious look on her face. "So, you must be the Mao Lucifer," she said, before introducing herself. "Nice to meet you, my name is Zenovia." "Nice to meet you too, Zenovia. I'm Sir Zex Lucifer." Surzex smiled friendlily before taking Zenovia's hand and shaking it. I received the report from Rias. The bearer of the holy sword Durandal reincarnated as a devil, and it was even mentioned that she became part of my sister's family. Truth be told, I was doubting my ears when I first heard it. Truth to be told, I also did not expect to become a devil, to be reincarnated to the side that I swore to kill. She trailed off, looking to the side and starting to doubt herself once again, as usual. The past few weeks, Naruto had realized that Zenovia was the type of girl who boldly did what was in her head, but she would always end up regretting it later. Ha ha ha, it's great that my little sister's family has a lot of interesting people. Surzex let out a laugh before continuing. Zenovia, please continue to support my sister with the best of your ability. I'm counting on you. Well, if it is a request from the legendary Mao, then I have no choice. Zenovia said, switching back to her usual confident self. I don't know how much I will be able to do, but allow me to do what I can. After hearing Zenovia's words, Surzex smiled and nodded his head. Thanks. And with that, Surzex turned his attention to the last devil in the room, and smiled as he walked toward him. I believe this is the first time we meet, isn't it, Naruto-kun? Yes. Nice to meet you, sir. Naruto smiled, and offered Surzex his hand to shake. The crimson-haired Mao smiled and took it, not minding that Naruto was still sitting. The cute cat napping on his lap looked so content, that no one wanted to move her and disturb her sleep. Nice to meet you as well. Surzex grinned as he then took a seat next to his sister, accepting a cup of tea from Akino, as she walked over with a new teapot. Grafia told me a lot about you. Only the good things, I hope. Yes, and that you are having a great time with your champions. Surzex smiled as he took a small sip from his drink. To be honest, I would too if I had the power to summon characters of my favorite video game. You have no idea how much I want to see a real-life Mario. When the first Super Mario Bros. Came out years ago. Didn't know you are a gamer too, Surzex-sama. Actually, I'm not. I only play video games when I'm with my son, who's only 10-year-old, and is better than his old man. The crimson-haired Mao shook his head and said he admires you very much. By the way. He thinks that you have the coolest power. Yes, Grafia-san has told me. Naruto nodded his head with a soft chuckle before he asked, sounding hopeful, does he have a favorite champion, Surzex-sama? If he wants, then surely, I can set up a meeting for him. On the condition that the champion wasn't evil and hell-bent on destroying the world, of course. He does, but I don't think it's a good idea, Naruto-kun. Surzex chuckled forcefully while waving a hand in front of his face. His mother has been on my ass since I spent the whole weekend playing League with him. She will be pissed if I do something that encourages him to play the game even more, you know. I mean, she even told Grafia. A correct decision, Surzex-sama. Grafia spoke up calmly, making Surzex chuckle softly while scratching the back of his head. Nevertheless, he really loves Draven, so on a special event, like his birthday or something like Christmas, for example, if you can convince the glorious executioner to dress up as Santa Draven and show up, then it'd be totally awesome. Surzex said, laughing loudly as if he had gotten an amazing idea, until Grafia arrived at his side and made sure he understood that it was not. Naruto, meanwhile, had a thoughtful expression on his face right after he heard the word Santa Draven, which was a Draven skin. Skins. He jumped out of his seat with a start. The whole club room went silent and all eyes turned to him. At the same time, Yumi let out an angry meow as she was violently woke up from her sleep, rolling off of his lap and landing on the floor, but fortunately, having the natural instinct of a cat, she did so safely and gracefully on all four of her paws. How come he had never thought about that before? Naruto, what? Come, Yumi. Book. Before the magical cat could finish her question, Naruto had already grabbed both of them and ran to the door of the clubroom while holding Yumi and Book in his arms. Before he left, however, with his hand on the doorknob, Naruto turned around and said to his friends, as well as the two powerful devils in the room, sorry everyone, but there is this thing that I must try immediately. Kiba, can you take care of my job for me as well? Sure. The noble knight answered with an unsure smile. Awesome, see you back at home, Bucho, Asia, Graphia-san. It's an honor talking to you, Surzek-sama. With that, Naruto left the room without saying any other word. There was a moment of silence before Surzek broke it with a small laugh. My little sister's family has a lot of interesting characters indeed. After a moment, Surzek turned his head over to his sister and said, by the way, Rias-chan, there's something you should know. I wanted to tell Naruto-kun too, but yeah, he left before I could do it. What is it, Oni-sama? It has been requested by the Phoenix that we allow Revel to transfer to Kuo Academy, so that she may gain experience living in the human world. Surzek smiled as Rias widened her eyes in surprise, and obviously, it has been decided that Naruto-kun will be tasked with helping her acclimate and her protection. It also means that she will stay with you at his house, so make sure to tell that to him when he comes home tonight, okay? Chapter 19. That morning, Revel Phoenix stood in the kitchen of Uzumaki residence, wearing an apron around her waist. As she didn't want her hair to get into the batter, which was now cooking along with the cakes in the oven, her blonde locks had been tied back into a single ponytail at the back of her head instead of the usual drills, similar to that of her mother's. The timer said it was 15 minutes left until it finished baking, so Revel used that time to focus on the mixer currently mixing her ingredients for the chocolate frosting, but as she stood there, the youngest child of the Phoenix household couldn't stop herself from recalling the events that she had had the past few days, coming to study as a first-year student at Kuo Academy, and living in the same house as the high-class devil she greatly admired, Rias Gremory. The first 2 days had been difficult for her, having been tutored almost her entire childhood. Revel really didn't know how normal school would be, so she was a little overwhelmed, though she had done her best to not show it. In the end, it had been all thanks to Rias's advice and guidance, as well as her reluctant classmate Kaneko Tuju, who called her Yakitori, and annoyed her the first moment their eyes met, that she had been able to make it and become more comfortable with high school. But the most interesting of them all had to be with Naruto Uzumaki, summoner of the League of Legends. Over the course of a few days, she had been able to get to know him better, while being treated with nothing but kindness and friendliness by the blonde, who didn't seem to care that she was a high-class lady of a noble devil house. Because of it, and also his casual attitude as well as lack of proper respect, he was a bit annoying to her at first, but the more time she spent around Naruto, the more she felt herself being drawn toward him, and it hadn't been just because he was the summoner of Anivia the Cryo Phoenix. The day that he had summoned Anivia and introduced Revel to her, and her parents when they came to meet him properly for the first time, had been the best and happiest moment of her life. Revel had always wanted to meet a true Phoenix, regardless of her element, since the day she was just a little child, so to become friends with one and to be acknowledged by her as well, had been a truly mind-blowing experience for the youngest child of the Phoenix Devil household. "What you cooking, kid?" Revel flinched, almost gasped when she heard that voice and felt a presence suddenly appear behind her. Snapping her head around, she saw the ancient demoness Evelyn standing there with a smile on her face, wearing that scanty-made outfit of hers whenever Graphia or the two parents weren't around. "Evelyn, please stop creeping up on me like that." Revel snapped at Evelyn while holding her chest. Yes, like everyone in the house, she was still a bit wary of Evelyn, whose love for pain and suffering was only outclassed by her unhealthy obsession for rough hardcore sex with her summoner Naruto Uzumaki, but she didn't hate or even dislike her. But recently the demoness had started to get on her nerves with how she always tried to get on her nerves just to see the cute angry face of a little bird, as Evelyn had put it herself. "Maybe you should be more aware of your surroundings, maybe that will help," the demoness casually said as she walked to Ravel's side and reached out to touch the chocolate frosting the Phoenix girl was mixing in the bowl with her pinky finger. Evelyn then commented after she had licked it off her fingertip, in a rather sexual manner, "Oh nice, that chocolate frosting tastes really good. Did not expect that from a little noble lady." Thanks, I guess," Revel said, accepting the praise from the 15,000-year-old demoness as she went to check on the cake in the oven, allowing the blonde to take a better look at Evelyn before commenting, "You look different." "Did Naruto-sama give me a makeover this morning? Yes, he did. If you ask me, I think he's having a little bit too much fun with that new power of his, and Ari isn't really helping. She seems to like playing dress-up with him though. Agony's Embrace said in mild annoyance before she stood up, curling her long silver hair behind her back and picking a pan up to use it like a mirror, looking at her own reflection. Not a fan of this look, but who am I to complain? I think it suits you. Ravel smiled, but when Evelyn glanced at her, the Phoenix girl quickly added before she got the wrong idea, while waving her hands in front of her, don't be mistaken. I mean you just look less threatening and more trustworthy, that's all. Don't worry Han, I'm open for all types, keywords, all types. The demoness slurred seductively as she licked her lip in a sexual manner before breaking out in laughter when Ravel's cheeks went completely red. Ah, it's so fun to tease young little girls like you. Asia is still pure, so she can't understand most of my jokes but you. The demoness chuckled evilly, her eyes glinting evilly. What are you doing here in the kitchen, Evelyn? Ravel decided to interrupt her to change the subject, having had enough of the demon's shameless sexual teasing. How Naruto and Rias were able to put up with this demon was beyond her. Today is not your cooking day, if I remember correctly. Because there were so many people in the house with amazing cooking skills, Kushina had decided to arrange a cooking schedule for all of them. For example, the mother would be cooking on Monday and Thursday, while Rias would have Tuesday and Sunday all for herself to prepare lunch and dinner for everyone, etc., etc. It was a fairly simple schedule, with the days being divided equally, so no one had ever complained about it. Actually, it is. Surzex Lucifer asked for Graphia's assistance in preparing for the meeting between the three factions, so she asked me to cover it for her before she left to the underworld this morning. Ravel raised an eyebrow in realization at that. So that was the reason she couldn't find the silver-haired maid anywhere and thought that she was with Naruto, Ari, Rias and Asia, who were currently training in one of the training rooms of the first basement floor and running even more tests on his new power. Ravel had not asked what they were really doing down there since she didn't want to disturb Naruto and her Rias-sama of their works, but the two seemed to be getting closer and closer to a groundbreaking discovery, one that had shocked even Graphia herself when they told her about it. Oh, so you will be preparing lunch boxes for everyone today too, including Naruto-sama's? Yes, can't let our hung, big-dicked of a summoner eat only chocolate cakes for lunch now, can we? He will need all the energy in the world to fuck me stupid once I have him in the mood for some mindless, hardcore sex. Ravel felt her face burn at that, despite the fact that she wasn't even using her demonic power. Evelyn, meanwhile, couldn't stop herself from laughing like a maniac, while holding her stomach, finding the face the usually prideful Phoenix girl was making too hilarious for her to keep it in. What's going on here? A calm and collected voice caused Evelyn to stop laughing and Ravel to look up to see it was none other than the robe-wind samurai Yasuo himself walking into the room with a neutral look on his face and Blitzcrank standing in the hallway behind him, though he had to crouch down a little because the path wasn't tall enough for him. Nothing, isn't that right, Ravel-chan? Evelyn asked the Phoenix girl, using the Japanese suffix she had heard so often around the house to make sure that Ravel would catch her hidden meaning. Why yes, nothing at all. Ravel shook her head while laughing nervously. I found that hard to believe, considering how hard you were laughing, demon. Yasuo said and took out from his yukata an empty cup of tea with a small teaspoon, whilst Evelyn just yawned, and had a look of boredom on her face. Miss Ravel, I would like to have some more tea, if you please. Oh, of course Yasuo-san. Ravel said and grabbed the teapot she had brewed earlier that morning for Yasuo and Naruto's father Minato before the latter left for work. Here you go. Smiling, the girl poured the tea into the cup for the rough samurai as he held it up for her. Thank you, young miss. Yasuo said as he darted his eyes to glance over to Evelyn. If the demon tries to pick on you, don't hesitate to let me know. The summoner and Miss Graphia have tasked me with. Blah blah, same boring shit. I teased the girl and then what? You are going to teach me a lesson, Yasuo? Evelyn questioned, interrupting with a casual smirk on her face. Why even make such a fuss about it? And even if it is so, you can't do anything to me. You are just a frail little human, and also, we both know that you suck ass at guarding duty. Be careful with your choices of words, demon. Yasuo said, his tone lowering as his eyes became sharp and his fingers lightly touched the teaspoon in his cup, an action that Evelyn noticed instantly. Or what? You are going to slit my throat with that teaspoon? I would love to see you try, Yasuo, while I shove that stupid sword of yours so far up your ass you can play IRL Fruit Ninja with your mouth. Almost at the same time, the two champions acted. It started with Yasuo putting his cut down the table, not spilling a droplet of tea even when he pulled the teaspoon out and held it out in front of him, taking a stance like a samurai holding his sword with one hand. Meanwhile, Evelyn's lashes appeared and shot out from the back of her neck as her fingernails grew sharp and extended like talons, mist-like shadow pouring out around her and returning the demoness to her previous sinister look and presence. Knock it off, you two. No fighting in the house. But before either of them could lunge at each other, with Evelyn being the one who would most likely do it first, a strong voice cut them off from current glaring contest and turned their heads to the hallways to see their summoner Naruto Uzumaki coming back from his training. Ari and Rias walking next to him, with Asia and her familiar Reito, riding on the floating book of Threshold with Yumi the magical cat, trailing a little behind them. Seeing the gentle former nun who had befriended him the first day he was at Uzumaki residence, Blitzcrank waved a hand at her, before walking back so Naruto could enter the kitchen and look at his two champions firmly with his arms crossing on his chest. She started it. The blonde could only sigh in defeat as Yasuo and Evelyn went back to glare at each other, with the Unforgiven being the one who looked more calm and casual than Agony's embrace as he pointed his teaspoon at her, who was also snarling like an angry animal. Since this wasn't the first time it had happened, Naruto wasn't feeling surprised in the slightest. Later that morning. Oh wow, this looks absolutely incredible. Naruto praised while looking into the box holding the chocolate cake Ravel had made for him. Rias and Asia also had one for themselves, and were currently carrying them beside their lunch boxes, which had been prepared for them by Evelyn after she had made peace with Yasuo on his request. Are really? The blonde Ojusama devil asked with a hopeful smile, her cheeks dusting pink. The girl acted proud and proper almost all the time, but Naruto thought her blushing face could be one of the cutest things ever. You really think so? Yeah, and I'm sure it will taste great too. The blonde grinned, giving her a thumb up. Oh, of course it will. Ravel laughed proudly in response. I woke up very early this morning to make them after all. Really, you really did? Ah, I'm flattered. The baka. Not just for a low-class devil like you. Naruto just laughed as Ravel shoved her hands into his chest, making him stumble back a little. Her cheeks couldn't really get any redder. He could see why Evelyn liked to tease her so much. The girl's reactions were just adorable. Okay, stop teasing her, Naruto. Rias spoke up with a smile before making a gesture toward the direction they were heading with her head. There are the others. The blonde smiled and looked to see the other members of the Occult Research Club standing and waiting for them at the front gate of Kuo Academy. Today was Saturday, so they didn't have school, but to prepare for the summer swimming classes the student council had tasked them with the job of cleaning one of the school pools near the gym, which had gotten very muddy and dirty since it hadn't been properly cleaned since the end of last semester, as well as because of the debris and smoke that ended up falling into it during the fight against Kokobeel. Once they were done, they could be the first to use the pool and use them however they wanted. It seemed to be something Rias had been looking forward to for the whole week. Break. They weren't kidding when they said that this pool was dirty, weren't they? Naruto asked with a chuckle as he looked at the pool before him. Yikes. I don't think I have ever seen dirtier water before. Yumi, who Naruto had summoned when they entered school, couldn't stop herself from commenting while doing her best to not vomit at the stinky smell coming from the lake. You know, I think I saw something similar to this during an exorcism years ago. Zenobia tilted her head to the side and casually commented, "It doesn't end well." The priest ended up possessed in the end. Asia shuddered at that as she stood with the other member of Rias Peerage looking at the pool they had been assigned to clean. The water had an ugly brown color and was almost pitch black. Sludge had accumulated over the surface of the water, and piles of leaves had built up so far from the floor that they poked out the top. It was hard to see the bottom, but they could see a massive rock and a section of the old gym's roof there, and they were definitely not the only ones. "Okay." Rias rolled up her sleeves and walked to the poolside. "I suppose we should get started." Rias-sama. Ravel began while covering her nose. "How exactly are we gonna clean up this mess?" It's not like she wasn't looking forward to learning new things, since she had never ever had to clean anything before in her life, with all the maids and servants at her home taking care of the basic chores for her, but the place looked like it would take them a long time to clean. "Naruto and I have discussed this," Rias pointed out. "First, we need to get rid of the water." With that, the blonde stepped forward and opened his bag to take out a pump-like machine, something that he had used Professor Heimerdinger's genius mind and power to create earlier that day. As he pushed the big red button on the back of the pump, a tube shot into the muddy water of the pool and began to suck it up at a rapid rate. "Don't ask me how it works," he said before Kiba could ask him anything. This was the drawback of merging with the Yordle professor, as his genius mind was his and his alone, like a supercomputer that could simplify everything for Naruto, while he was simply a secondary user. Once they separated, Naruto would lose all that belonged to Heimer, even the thought processes that he had made while merging with him. Still, it did not take it long for the pump to do the work, sucking up all the dirty water in the pool despite being just a bit bigger than a soccer ball. Once done, the tube went back to the machine, allowing Rias to step forward and speak to him with a smile. "Good job, Naruto. Now it's my turn." With that said, she waved her hand and unleashed a wave of power of destruction. It formed over the pool before slowly lowering down, eradicating the sludge and leaves as well as the broken debris and rocks at the bottom before the demonic wave of power vanished completely, leaving nothing but a normal empty pool. "Now we get down there and use these to sterilize the pool, just to be sure that we won't be swimming in a pool of bacteria," the crimson-haired high-class devil continued, and Naruto took out from his backpack a half-dozen spray bottles and brushes before handing it out to the other members of the club. "And of course, like the pump, Professor Uzumaki makes them for us. You know, Bucho, we really need to stop with that nickname. It makes me feel really old, you know," Naruto said, but Rias merely stuck out her tongue cutely before she grabbed her own bottle and jumped down into the pool to start sterilizing it. "I think it's cool and cute." Akino giggled softly into her hand as she accepted her spray bottle from Naruto. "Yes, Naruto-kun." Kiba chuckled as he added, "And I also think that you will need to name your combinations with your champions. I think Professor Naruto is a good one with you merging with Professor Heimerdinger. So, if I merge with Ari, what shall it be then?" the blonde knight suggested with a shrug. "QB mode? I think I can come up with something better than that, but I like it. Don't just stand there, you three. Hurry up so we can use the pool." Rias called from inside the pool while cleaning with her brush, making everyone hurriedly climb down and start helping her with the cleaning. It took them about 20 minutes to finish, and once that everyone had climbed out of the pool, fresh water was poured inside. It's time for them to have their reward. Soon enough, Naruto was down to his black and orange swimming trunks, having done the changing in the gym. Kiba was the same, but his was a blue one. Asia and the two first-year girls were both dressed in their school swimsuits. While the two blondes looking rather uncomfortable in them, Kaneko had a blank expression on her face, as usual, as she adjusted a swim cap over her head. Rias, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying herself. Her perfect body was on display with her new white two-piece swimsuit, leaving nothing to the imagination, but no one would complain about it. Like her best friend and king, Akino was also wearing her own swimsuit, but it was even more revealing than Rias, being just a little more than a slingshot bikini that let her show off almost all of her lewd and voluptuous body, with her breasts and ass on full display. Zenobia, meanwhile, had not returned. Wow, talk about going overboard. Naruto couldn't help but comment. It was quite fortunate that he had dealt with enough of Evelyn's sexual teasing and Ria's habit of sleeping naked, or else he would have stood there gasping with his jaw on the ground. He then turned his head over to Asia, who was standing with the other two, and praised with his trademark grin, "You three look great, by the way." "Thank you, senpai," Kaneko said to him in her usual tone. Ravel didn't look like she heard him, as she was still adjusting her swimsuit. The girl probably had never worn something that looked so simple, and at the same time exposed so much of her skin before. Asia, on the other hand, had a huge smile on her face when she heard him say that. "Really? You really think so, Naruto-san?" The former nun beamed with joy at the compliment before looking herself over. "Bucho-san wanted to buy me a swimsuit too, but I think I am more comfortable with the school swimsuit." But you really think it looks good?" "Yeah, absolutely. You look cute in just about everything you wear, Asia." The blonde girl blushed with joy at his compliment before Naruto continued, "So you've never been to a pool before? Do you know how to swim?" "I actually don't, Naruto-san." Asia shook his head and answered him with a nervous smile. "Okay, let me help you." The blonde grinned as he jumped into the water, swiping his wet hair back from his forehead with a hand. "Naruto, do you mind helping Kaneko-chan too while I help Ravel?" Ria spoke up from where she was sitting on the other side of the pool. "She doesn't know how to swim too, and can really use your help." "You don't know how to swim too?" Naruto asked in surprise, looking at the white-haired girl. Ravel could understand because she's a fire phoenix, so obviously she didn't mix well with water, but Kaneko always seemed so in control of everything around her, so to find out you can't and don't like to swim is a bit surprising. "I don't like the water." Kaneko tried to sound indifferent, but he could still hear the nervousness in her soft voice. "Swimming is my least favorite activity." "I see, don't worry about it, Kaneko-chan." Naruto grinned, "With my help, you will know how to swim in no time." Kaneko continued to look unsure, but in the end, she nodded her head nonetheless and waited for Naruto to finish showing Asia the basics of swimming before moving on to her, holding her hands and helping her with some basic exercises. "You can do it, Kaneko-chan." Asia cheered from the side, rooting for Kaneko with a big smile on her face. On the other side of the pool, his master was giving Ravel the same lesson. The girl looked so much more nervous than Kaneko, but was doing everything that Rias was instructing her to. "Whoa, easy there." When Kaneko and Ravel crossed paths with each other, their eyes met and almost instantly the two began to kick their legs and swim even harder than before, determined to know how to swim faster than the other. In the end, Naruto and Rias had to wait till both girls had run out of stamina to be able to start their own swimming time, doing so separately at first before starting to play some games with each other, using a ball that they could use to pass between each other. Of course, the ball wasn't the only bouncy thing that Naruto had his attention on. Not being a pervert or anything like that, but they were so eye-catching that he couldn't stop but stare at them for a little while before snapping himself away. You think we can grow fishes in this pool?" Yumi asked while munching on some fish Evelyn had prepared for her on the poolside. "It's a swimming pool, Yumi, not an aquarium." Naruto answered her with a chuckle. Asia was sleeping not too far away from him, and Yumi due to tiredness. Kaneko was also by the poolside resting on a beach chair under an umbrella while reading a book. Ravel, meanwhile, was doing her homework like the hard-working student that she was. "Rias is calling for you, I think," Yumi suddenly said, making Naruto turn his head around and look at Rias, who was beckoning him to come to her with a hand waving in front of her face. "Come here." She mouthed the words, and Naruto wasted no time to climb onto the poolside and make his way over to her after drying himself up with a towel. "How can I help you, Bucho?" Naruto asked once he was right next to her, but he had had a basic idea of what she needed from him after seeing the bottle of sunscreen in her hand. "Can you help me apply this?" Rias asked with a smile, handing him the bottle of sunscreen before explaining, we don't get burned under the sun like vampires, but sunlight is still the natural enemy of us devils, so we need this special sunscreen if we expose ourselves under the sun for too long. Sure, I'd love to, Bucho. Naruto grinned at Rias as he took the bottle from her. Then shall we begin immediately? Rias smiled, and then to his shock and surprise, she removed her tiny top in front of him. Naruto felt himself almost slipping, even though the poolside wasn't that wet and he wasn't even walking at all. His master had taken her bikini top off in front of him with seemingly no care for her modesty, leaving her large and firm breasts to bounce erotically. Sure, she slept in his room naked at least 2 or 3 times every week, but this was something entirely different. Ah, don't be so surprised. There's no other boy around here, so I don't mind if it's you. Rias told him with a soft chuckle before she turned around and lied down on her stomach, causing her breasts to pillow out underneath her as she parted her crimson hair to reveal the smooth and dazzling white skin of her back to his eyes. Naruto felt himself gulp nervously, because there were also the perfect globes of her ass as it was covered by nothing but a small white bottom. Go on ahead, and remember that I want the oil all over my body, Naruto. She added, making sure that the blonde was able to catch her meaning before moving on to do what he was told, starting with spreading the oil around the smooth expanse of skin on her back, before putting his hand down and beginning to spread it out. Her skin was so incredibly soft and smooth that Naruto doubted he would need to oil to be able to move his hands so smoothly. Will this do, Bucho? Naruto couldn't help but ask. He had seen other couples doing this before, but he didn't know if he was doing it correctly or not, or even consider himself and Rias to be a couple. She did seem to like him a lot, however, favoring him over Kiba, the other active male member of the group, but at the same time Rias was very affectionate with her servants, so it was hard for him to tell if she really had feelings for him. He would love nothing more than having the chance to date someone like her if it was possible. You're surprisingly good at this, you know, Naruto. Rias said as she looked at him from over her shoulder. Now, time to move your hand even lower. You can remove my bikini bottom too if it is in the way. Okay, that might be a bit too far for a simple master-servant relationship. Then please, don't mind me. Naruto said and poured some more sunscreen into his hands before placing his palm down her cheeks, making her moan softly before smiling at him, turning her hips a little to make her ass wobble and jiggle. Naruto swallowed hard before he began to spread the lotion all over her heart-shaped, but, knowing that this was the thing so many men had wanted to do, but couldn't as his fingers sunk a bit into her soft flesh, even going so far as moving his hand under her bikini bottom to make sure that he did not miss a spot. Have you ever done this before, Naruto? Rias asked when Naruto moved his hands down her thighs. No, I haven't. The blonde admitted honestly with a chuckle. Would you like to do it again? Getting your hands all over me? Rias asked as she looked at him with a seductive smile. We can do it again in the shower or late at night tonight, if you want. Naruto felt like having a nosebleed at that, but he refrained himself from ironically turning into an icky manga's protagonist. He also knew that Rias wasn't joking or teasing him, and meant every word he said. Was he clueless enough to not catch the hint? No. Was he stupid enough to turn down such an offer? Absolutely not. Yes, I'd love nothing more than that, Bucho. He might be turning into a pervert, but it wasn't for no good reason. Good now. Rias then turned around and laid down on her back, her breasts heaving on her chest as she folded her hands behind the back of her head. I want some sunscreen on my front body too, Naruto. As you wish, Bucho. Naruto really didn't waste any more time than that. The moment that he put his palms on her breasts, Naruto couldn't help but feel like he had accomplished an unachievable achievement, something that so many men had wanted to do, but couldn't. Continuing with his current task, Naruto was unable to stop himself from succumbing to the incredible sensation her breasts was making him feel, to the point that his hands unconsciously start groping and kneading at the twin orbs, making Rias moan out in approval, and allow him to continue to do it, even after her breasts had been covered fully in sunscreen. Era, Naruto-kun, will you apply oil to me too? Before Naruto could move his hand down, however, he then heard a sing-song voice, and felt something extremely soft and elastic press against his back before seeing a pair of slender arms wrapping around him. Oh wow, your body is so hard, Naruto-kun. With that, Akino's face expectedly appeared over his shoulder, making him take his hands back from Ria's breasts. Akino-senpai? Naruto asked, but he didn't sound surprised in the slightest. In the end, who else had that sweet One-E-san voice and that era giggle anyway? Now, don't you think that it is a bit unfair that you only do this for Bucho? Akino asked as if she was lightly criticizing him about something that definitely was not his fault while pressing her breasts against his back. Hey, Akino. Can't you see that Naruto is spending his time with me? Rias asked with a fierce look on her face as she sat up, her breasts jiggling enticingly in front of him when she did so. Akino didn't look afraid, and continued to rest her chin on his shoulder. Just like that, their cheeks touched. Hey, Naruto-kun. This lady here is so scary. Wanna go off somewhere to have some fun with me? She asked, whispering in his ear, but obviously Rias could hear it. The two then started glaring at each other, with Akino still wearing the playful smile on her face as she looked back directly at Rias, finding the amusement in teasing her and also Naruto. I have returned. Zenobia announced as she returned with a standard one-piece swimsuit that showed off her toned and curvy body. Whoa, you're gone for like an hour, sword girl. Yumi spoke to her after looking up from her half-eaten fish with a surprised look on her face. You miss all the fun. Yeah, I have trouble putting this thing on, but I'm fine now. She answered casually, crossing her arms on her chest as she looked over at the three devils on the other side of the pool. What's going on here? Nothing you should worry about, I suppose, was the answer Yumi gave her before returning back to her fish, leaving Zenobia even more confused than before. Chapter 19. We're back. Naruto called upon walking into his home with Rias, Ravel and Asia following closely behind him, and Yumi riding with them inside Asia's bag, poking her head out to look at them from inside. Welcome back, you five. Ari smiled as she stepped out of the kitchen to greet them, with an apron worn around her waist. Were you all having fun today? Yeah, you should have joined us, Ari. We had so much fun. Rias answered with a very radiant and beautiful smile, causing Ari to raise an eyebrow at her in curiosity. The nine-tailed fox Vastaya could tell that the crimson-haired high-class devil was in a very good mood. Something amazing must have happened to her at the school pool. I can swim, but I'm not a fan of water, so it's a no for me. Ari shook her head and smiled anyway. Your parents are back. Dinner will be ready in an hour, so you all should go wash up before we eat. You're cooking tonight? Naruto couldn't help but ask while having a playful smile on his face. Yes, but Evelyn is helping me, so don't worry, I won't burn half a kitchen down this time. The black-haired fox Vastaya answered with a tone full of sarcasm and a cute pout as she put her hands on her hips. Naruto just laughed as he put his shoes away, recalling Ari's first time in the kitchen. The nine-tailed fox could cook, but she usually did it over a campfire and not with the equipment that they had in the kitchen, having lived the majority of her life in the wilderness of Ionia. While she had gotten better at using a stove, no one in the house trusted Ari enough to leave her alone in the kitchen, so she always had to cook with at least another cook watching over her, usually Evelyn, since the two of them were best friends and had a much easier time with each other than the rest. Wait for me in the shower. He suddenly heard a whisper, and turned her head to see Rias smiling at him with their faces merely an inch from each other. Remembering what she had promised him at the pool earlier that day, the blonde couldn't stop, but feel all giddy and excited. It would not the first time they had taken a bath with each other, no, since Rias had always had a tendency to burst into the bathroom whenever he was using it to bath with him, usually with Asia, because she didn't want to be left out, but nonetheless, he knew that this time it would be different. I'm gonna go take a shower now. Naruto announced before hurriedly setting off to the bathroom on the second floor of his home, with Ari seemingly being the only one who noticed. He looked so much more eager than normal right after Ari had snuck behind the other girls, Asia specifically, and whispered something into his ear. "Sona is back, by the way." The nine-tailed Gumiho called after her summoner, who grinned and nodded his head in understanding before taking a turn from the path to the shower room to head towards Sona's room, where he then raised his hands to knock and patiently waited for his blue-haired champion to answer the door. He did not have to wait long, as only a few seconds later, Sona opened the door and greeted him with a smile as beautiful as her music, wearing a blue dress that matched the color of her hair, and allowed her to show off her voluptuous body amazingly. "Good evening, Naruto. How are you today?" "I'm great. What about you, Sona? How was your audition today?" Naruto asked with a hopeful smile. When the current lord and lady of the Phoenix household arrived at his home with their daughter to meet him officially for the first time, they hadn't just come to ask him to take care of Ravel, but they had also come with a job offer to Sona after hearing how amazing her music was from the Gremory. Apparently, the Phoenix owned the largest media industry of the Devil faction, with their second child being the boss of one of their companies, and had been looking for young and promising talents for their music empire. Sona, being an extremely talented virtuoso herself, was just the person they had been looking for to become their new rising star for years to come. Of course, for someone who had been waiting for the chance to play her music in front of a crowd to the fullest without having to hold back or needing to worry about anything, Sona had accepted their offer almost instantly and signed a contract with the Phoenix household, with Graphia acting as her temporal manager and helping her out with the paperwork. The past few days the Maven had been doing a number of auditions and recording sessions, 2 of which Naruto had participated with everyone so that they could cheer for her, and all of which she had passed beautifully with how well she had played. From what Rias and Ravel had told him, Sona's magical music was very well received, and with her being a very beautiful and attractive young woman, it did not take it long for the Maven to become extremely popular in the underworld with her ability to play a variety of instruments, not just etwal, flawlessly and beautifully. It wasn't exaggerated to say that Sona captured the hearts of her audiences, bringing them from sorrow to bliss, from righteous martial pride to almost exquisite peace, as she made them fall in love with her music itself. It's also worth mentioning that because she was basically a video game character that came to life, Sona was even more popular among the young devils who loved video games and had started to play League. Nevertheless, Sona was living the dream of her whole life, and Naruto was very happy for her as it was one of the main reasons that he had decided to offer her a place to live in his world, so her music wouldn't be wasted in a country that absolutely despite magic users like Sona. "It went very well, Naruto." Sona smiled beautifully as she answered him, before she made an expression like she suddenly remembered something, heading back into her room to pick up something on the table before returning to hand it to him, smiling brightly as she continued through the communication telepathic link of them. "Here, this is for you." "This is..." Naruto widened his eyes in realization as he looked at the thing that appeared to be a ticket in his hand. "Yes, it's a ticket to my first concert. Front seat," Sona told him while smiling brightly, before suddenly her expression became somewhat shy as she continued rather nervously. "I know that you've been very busy, Naruto, but if it is possible I'd be honored if you..." "Are you kidding me? Of course I'd love to come to your concert, Sona." Naruto shook his head and interrupted Sona before she could finish, having figured out what she wanted to say the moment she started it, making the blue-haired young woman look at him in surprise for a moment before smiling radiantly. "So will everyone have their own ticket?" "Yes, I have enough tickets for everyone. I will give them at dinner tonight. It's just that I want to give yours to you first." Sona answered with a nod of her head, smiling softly at him as she continued. "Thank you, Naruto. For everything. Please don't mention it." Naruto grinned and bid goodbye to Sona to go to his room, where he left his ticket in a drawer of his table and grabbed a pair of fresh clothes before making his way toward the second floor's bathroom at the end of the hallway. Once inside, the blonde made his way to the shower and turned the water onto a hot setting. He wouldn't have to wait long, so Naruto quickly got rid of his school uniform, undid the button of his shirts, and then pushed down his pants along with his boxers before stepping under the warm spray, which had started to get hot. Naruto had no idea how long he would have to wait, but he made sure to wash himself very carefully. The entire time, however, Naruto couldn't help but think about what would happen next once Rias arrived, causing his member to become rock hard. Then, the blonde heard the sound of the bathroom's door opening, and wiped his hand on the wet wall of the shower room to see a somewhat blurry mop of unmistakable crimson-red hair entering the room before the door was closed and locked so no one could disturb them. He then heard a rustling sound of clothing being removed, and grew impatient in anticipation as a result. Fortunately for Naruto, Rias didn't make him wait too long, and slid the door of the shower room open to enter, naked as her long, beautiful crimson hair flowed down her back and toward the back of her knees like a waterfall. Era, did I make you wait, Naruto? Naruto instantly shook his head and swallowed hard, but not because of nervousness but excitement and arousal. Maybe all of Evelyn's shameless sexual teasing and advances had finally gotten to him. Era, look who's eager. Rias smiled, her eyes darting down to his well-endowed member. She would be lying to herself if she denied having never seen it before, with how many times she had taken a bath with him and checking him out while doing so. Can I? As Rias stepped under the shower with Naruto, the two spoke up almost at the same time, stopping when they realized what they were doing but nonetheless ended up smiling at each other. Deciding to take the lead, Naruto leaned down a little and pressed his lips against hers, kissing his master as he wrapped his arms around her sexy body with no hesitation to move one hand down to grope at her butt, making Rias moan softly into his mouth while kissing him back, breasts mashing against his chest. As the two continued sharing their wet, tongue-filled kiss that seemed to get more and more aggressive with each other, Rias moved her hand through the tiny gap of their bodies and found his shaft resting on both of their bellies. Wrapping her fingers around it, she began to stroke him, moving from the tip and going all the way down to the base. Naruto groaned in her mouth as he entangled his tongue with Rias and felt himself unconsciously jerking his hips a bit to the movements of her hand, grunting when she tugged and squeezed harder at his dick. Only after 10 minutes of passionate kissing did they break away from each other. That was my first kiss, you know. Rias told him as her hand continued to probe and shift his lurching member around. That was mine too. You like it? I do. It's so much better than anything I have expected, especially when you are the one to have it. She said, smiling up at him, but you better take responsibility for having my first kiss, and for making me wait for so long. You bet I will, boo. Rias, can I call you Rias? It feels weird addressing you as Bucho after we have gone this far. Go ahead, I don't mind, just make sure to call me by my name whenever you feel like it. Don't force yourself to call me Bucho just for the sake of formality. Naruto grinned and claimed her lips with his own, kissing her with even more passion this time as his hands groped at her, and roamed freely across her smooth backside, almost lifting her up as he stepped forward until Rias' back was pushed against the glass wall of the shower room. After a moment, Rias ended their kiss and threw her head back, letting out a soft moan as Naruto kissed down her neck while his hand squeezed and rubbed at her bountiful buttock, getting even more comfortable with the way how their relationship had turned out. In addition, Naruto also couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride for being able to do something like this to his master, a high-class young lady of a noble devil household, while he was just a servant of her, and a normal human with a standard upbringing in the past. As he kissed his way down her chest, Rias started jerking her hand at a faster rate, making Naruto grunt in pleasure as he arrived at the massive springy mounds of her breasts, hands moving out and molding into the fleshy expanses. His eyes traced up and down the crease between her breasts, hypnotized by its subtle sexiness. Under the shower, her body was practically glowing with flawless, natural beauty. Rias let out a moan as her whole body shuddered from the sensation of his palms pressing into her breasts, squeezing and kneading at her soft flesh while his thumb flicking over her nipples gently. It did not take it long for Naruto to lean down and press his face between them, feeling just how soft they were with his cheek before parting his lips and sucking on her nipples, making Rias moan in approval before they shared another kiss with each other. This time, Naruto pushed his tongue into her mouth even more ferociously, and Rias returned it with the same intensity as Naruto greedily pulled her body closer against his, their mouths and tongues growing bolder and bolder with each intake of each other's breath between the passionate saliva swapping. At the same time, Rias' hand continued working tirelessly on him, becoming more and more successful as pushing him to his limit, edging him to unload his seed all over her milky skin. Obviously, she could feel the signs of my impending orgasm, his cock pulsating without falter, followed by his rapid and short breathing. It did not take long for Naruto to release his load after that, spilling his seed on their lower torsos, but ignored the mess in favor of continuing to lock lips. Only after another minutes of fervent kissing did the pair break away from each other, with Rias smiling at Naruto before turning around to put her walls on the walls while sticking her beautiful rump back toward him. Here, Rias said while looking back at Naruto, whose dick was still rock hard and lurching excitedly at the way she was presenting herself before him, from over her shoulder. Fuck me however you want, Naruto, she said, and reached one hand behind her to pull her ass cheek to the side, exposing her tight virgin twat to Naruto, who scooted forward till he could press his cock against Rias's wet pink folds and grasped her hips with one hand. Here I go. Grinning broadly, Naruto pushed his cock into Rias's tight pussy, grunting loudly at the incredible tightness and warmness of her inside. A quiet groan escaped from Rias as she felt herself get stretched and penetrated by Naruto's dick as he claimed her virginity so tight. Naruto grunted as he started to slowly pump into the small passage that was currently gripping his cock. Moving his hands, Naruto grabbed Rias's ass in his hands and began to thrust faster into her, thrusting more of his cock into her tight pussy. His grip on her but tightened as he started fucking up into Rias' tight twat in earnest, causing Rias to moan out and experience a toe-curling orgasm and spurring him on to fuck her even harder. Still, due to the incredible tightness of Rias' pussy, it did not take it long for Naruto to reach his limits, causing his thrusts to pick up even more speed, but shortened, his hips now a blur as he forced all of his cock into Rias's already stretched out cunt, his hips colliding against her heart-shaped ass cheeks. The pressure building up in his balls easily dwarfed his earlier load. I'm gonna come. Rias, he gasped, overwhelmed by the pleasure. Come inside me, Naruto, claim me as yours. Hearing that was all Naruto could take, and with a loud grunt, the blonde started to hose down Rias's womb with his cum, making Rias let loose as well at the feeling of his seed inside her. The feeling of her tight inside clenching down around his dick sent waves of pleasure up his spine, causing him to see white for a second. So good. Naruto. Rias moaned as she rotated her hips, keeping his dick hard despite this being the second time he'd come more. More Naruto. Naruto grinned, feeling more than happy to oblige his master. Meanwhile, should we tell them that dinner is ready? Standing in the hallway just outside, Ari asked as she crossed her arms under her bust, her fox ear twitching as she could hear the sounds of the rutting pair inside the bathroom. After closely observing both Rias and Naruto, and how the two had acted when they returned, it hadn't been that difficult for Ari to tell what the two wanted to do with each other, though she was not surprised that it was finally happening, having seen how Rias acted around Naruto from day one she was at his home. Nah, let them be. You don't want to disturb young and hormonal teenagers when they are expressing sexually love to each other. Evelyn answered with a playful giggle. Like Ari, she could hear the moaning coming from inside the bathroom. You sound awfully excited, you know? Ari couldn't help but say, looking suspiciously at her demon friend. Oh, you bet. Evelyn giggled as she leaned a bit closer to the door of the bathroom. This should boost his confidence a little and get him more comfortable with sex and all that shit. It won't be long till you see him drill me through the floor of his room. You know, I think coming here with you is a bad idea. Ari said finally as she narrowed her eyes at Evelyn, who winked playfully back at her. Come on, let's head down before everyone starts wondering where we are and disturb them. Drake. Didn't get much sleep last night, Naruto-kun? Akino leaned toward him and asked when Naruto stifled a yawn next to her. Before he could answer her question, the Nadeshiko continued with another, her lips curving up elegantly in a teasing smile as she leaned her head even closer to his league, or was it something more exciting? She asked, almost whispering, so that only him could hear her question. League, Akino-senpai. Leaning his head back from Akino with a small chuckle, Naruto answered while looking as normal as possible. I see. Try not to stay up late playing video games all night again, Naruto-kun, you know it's not good for your health. Akino leaned back and said, making Naruto nod his head. However, he didn't know if he could breathe out a sigh of relief or not, since Akino still had the smile on her face as she snuck glances between him and her best friend/master, who was currently unlocking the sealed door near their clubroom in the old school building. It made him feel that she had accepted his answer, just not the one he had given her. He hated lying to his friend, but at the same time he also couldn't go out and brag to everyone that he had stayed up late till 4 in the morning having sex with Rias in his bedroom, picking up where they had left off in the shower once the two of them finally realized they had missed dinner. With the help of Ari, who had been very aware of what they had done with each other in the shower, and some well-prepared excuses, Naruto and Rias had managed to cover up for their absence, allowing their life to continue normally in Uzumaki residence. Still, it had been quite obvious that like Ari, Evelyn had known about him and Rias too. It's also worth mentioning that every time he had seen her last night, she always had a knowing, somewhat teasing and seductive smile on her face, which was similar to the one Akino was wearing at the moment, albeit a lot more dangerous. Although Evelyn herself and her shameless behaviors no longer crept him out like how they had once been, Naruto couldn't stop himself from feeling a bit worried about how he would have to deal with her from now on, knowing full well her sexual advances would only get bolder from now on. As much as he did not want to admit it though, but putting a leash around her neck and used it to lead her like a bitch while fucking her stupid to show her who's the one in charge had always been a tempting idea for him. Alright, I'm opening the door. Rias announced after she had removed the final seal from the door. From what he had heard from her earlier that day, her brother had given Rias permission to release her other bishop from his seal as he believed that she's now strong enough to control him. From what he had heard about him so far, he was someone who had a very strong but uncontrollable power. And so, almost as soon as the heiress grabbed onto the door handle and pushed it open, an outrageously high-pitched scream was unleashed from a corner of the dark room. No. While Naruto, Asia, Ravel and Zenovia were quite startled by the sudden scream, Rias and Akino on the other hand, only sighed as the two great ladies entered the room with a nervously chuckling Kiba and a neutral-looking Kaneko following behind them. Good day to you, Rias said with a smile with her arms crossing under her large bust. Her devil vision allowed her to see clearly even in the dark room. It's nice to see you all energetic. WWWHYYYYYYYYY? The high-pitched voice from inside the room replied. Despite knowing that the other bishop was a boy, Naruto couldn't help but think that the voice was rather girly. So it's a boy, right? Naruto couldn't help but ask, leaning over to Ravel. The drilled-haired girl nodded her head in confirmation, but she looked to be wondering the same thing. Era, can you see? The seal was removed, you know? You are able to go out now. Let's all go out together, shall we? Akino persuaded the cross-dressing blonde with a gentle voice. However, she was shot down without hesitation, something that the Nadeshiko seemed to have expected. No. This place is good. I don't want to go outside. I don't want to meet people. Era. Akino could say with a hand on her cheek while Rias let out a sigh in defeat. As he heard that, Naruto could only stand there and scratch the back of his head in confusion. He then leaned to the side to peek into the room, and saw it to be decorated in an unexpectedly girlish manner, despite the fact that, again, the bishop was a male. There were stuffed dolls present here and there, but what caught his attention the most was a coffin that was placed in one corner of the room, where a cute-looking girl with platinum blonde hair and pinkish eyes, dressing in the Academy's girl uniform, was hiding. It took Naruto a second to realize that this was the male bishop of his master/girlfriend, Rias Gremory. So, he's a shut-in, and a cross-dresser. the blonde concluded. A cross-dresser was not unheard of, but the blonde found it hard to believe there was one as girlishly cute as he was. Yes, he has a hobby of dressing in female clothes. Akino informed Naruto with a nod. He finds them cute, isn't that right, Gasper Cohen? Eek. Gasper screeched when the other three girls entered the room and stood around Naruto, with Ravel looking at Gasper rather disapprovingly. The members sure have increased by a lot. The boy yelped again. Naruto was not sure if the reply was either out of surprise or fear, which was kinda rude because he and everyone had been looking forward to meeting him officially, especially Asia, since he was a fellow bishop like her. Yes and no, Gasper, everyone but Ravel here is my servant. She's the daughter of the Phoenix household who has come to this school to study. Rias introduced before looking at them. Everyone, this boy is Gasper Vladi. He's my first bishop and also a first year. Also, before being reincarnated he was half human, half vampire. So, a damper, right? Naruto asked and Rias nodded her head in confirmation before she turned around to look at Gasper, lowering herself down to his level before she spoke to him in a gentle tone. Gasper, it's fine for you to go out now? You don't have to be sealed anymore? However, Gasper only let out another cry. No. For me the outside world is impossible. I don't wanna. I am scared. I am scared of the outside. In any case, even if I go outside, it would only cause trouble for others. Wow, talk about overreacting. Naruto chuckled as he spoke to Gasper, who let out another scream before his eyes shone. A strange feeling then washed over the blonde, making him blink before he saw the cross-dressing boy running to the other side of the room, but then he realized no one but him reacted to it, with Rias not even turning her head, or Kiba making any movement with his hands while scratching the back of his head with a forced smile on his face. If anything, he would say that they all looked like they were frozen. Whoa. He gasped before the feeling disappeared and everyone could move again. Looking confused when they couldn't see Gasper in front of them anymore, he ran over their guys. Naruto pointed his hand to where Gasper was trying to hide from them. Oh, okay. Gasper, did you accidentally? Rias then paused and turned her head to look at Naruto with a look of surprise on her face. Hold on. Naruto, you saw him ran? She asked slowly. Yeah. Was I not supposed to? The blonde couldn't help but ask. No, of course not, it's just quite amazing, that's all, Naruto-kun. Kiba shook his head and told him with an admiring smile. Thanks, I guess. Naruto said before turning his attention back to Gasper. So what's his power exactly? Time control, Naruto-kun. Akino answered. Gasper-kun possesses a sacred gear called Forbidden Baler View that allows him to stop the time of everything in his field of vision for a fixed interval of time whenever he gets too excited or scared. But the problem is that he cannot control it. Rias continued her queen's words. So by the orders of the Archduke, and my brother Lucifer himself, he was sealed away to prevent unintentional activation of his power. The crimson-haired heiress explained further, making Naruto and the new members of the club nod their heads in understanding. Now, they understood the reason why Gasper was sealed. The power to control time was really no joke. Even though I don't want you to talk about me. Gasper's timid voice was heard from a big cardboard box. It seemed while everyone was talking among each other he had snuck in there to hide from everyone. Well, judging by ability, maybe he would be next after you and Akino. Rias analyzed while looking at Naruto. Even though I say half vampire, he came from a pure-blooded vampire family with a good lineage, and has a powerful sacred gear because of his human half. He's skilled with the abilities of vampires, and he also excels in human magic wielded by wizards as well. If not so, then he probably wouldn't have been made a bishop with just one evil piece. So how did you do it, Bucho? Naruto quickly corrected himself, but around the room many seemed to have caught on to it. I used a mutation bishop piece. Nonetheless, Rias answered before explaining it's different from ordinary evil pieces. For those who require more more than one piece to be reincarnated. Us high-class devils can use a mutation piece instead, though it's not common for more than 1 in 10 demons to have a single piece of them. It's an irregularity that came up when the evil pieces system was created, like a bug in a video game, but it looks like it was left on purpose. Gasper was the one who used that piece. But the problem is his ability, not his sacred gear. What do you mean, Ryo-sama? He possesses a rare ability, and it seems his sacred gear's power increases when he's unconscious. Maybe because of that, every day his power is increasing just like Naruto, albeit at a slower rate. Rias explains seriously, so there's a possibility he may attain Balance Breaker on his own in the future. Wow, you're quite awesome, huh, Gasper? Naruto chuckled as he looked at the cardboard box on the ground. In the past, I was judged to be not strong enough to control him by the people that evaluated me. Perhaps the reason that made them change their mind was because of you, whose raw demonic power has already surpassed that of a high-class devil, and Yuto, who has attained his Balance Breaker. Rias nodded as she looked down at Gasper. Plus, I think it's about time we take him out too. He's been in this room for far too long anyway. Will he be all right? I know that he's only half vampire, but aren't vampires weak against the sun? Not to mention that he's also a devil now. Don't worry. While he dislikes it, given his status as a damper, he has an ability known as Daywalker which allows him to move in the day, so there shouldn't be any problem. Rias nodded at the question. Almost instantly, another cry was heard from inside the cardboard box. No. I am fine inside this cardboard box. The air and light of the outside are a natural enemy to me. Please let me stay in this room, or a cardboard buzz. Naruto had an urge to facepalm at that, and decided to ignore him in favor of asking Rias another question. What about blood? He's a vampire, so does he need to drink some? Since he's a half-vampire, he doesn't thirst for blood as often. If you supply the blood for him once every 10 days, then there's no problem. Though it seems he originally didn't like drinking blood. Rias explained. As if to confirm Rias' answer, another scream was heard. I hate blood. I hate liver as well. Is there anything ordinary that you don't hate? Ravel asked with a look of displeasure on her face. A good-for-nothing vampire. Kaneko expectedly spoke those words with no mercy, resulting in another whine and cry from Gasper. It seemed to be the only time Kaneko and Ravel agreed on the same thing. So anyway, I will leave him to you guys. Rias looked at her servants. I need to leave with Akino and Yuto to see Sona and her servants to make the final arrangement for the meeting between the leaders of the 3 factions this Sunday, so for today, I trust that you can help Gasper with his sacred gear and his shut-in problem somewhat. Don't worry, Bucho, leave it to me. I know just the one who can teach him how to control his time power. Naruto grinned, and then raised his hand, causing Rias and the others to step back a little to make some room for him when they saw Naruto using his summoning power. In a flash of light, floating in front of them in a divine aura, with his legs crossed, was an old man with a magnificent white beard, long eyebrows and matching color hair. His outfit consisted of a red robe with long white sleeves and black pants, with a single, long white flap connecting to the belt he wore around his waist. Ah, hello. Despite his divine appearance, the old man had an elderly warm smile on his face as he turned his head to look at Naruto. Young summoner Naruto Uzumaki, how may I be of service to you today? Hello, Gramps. Naruto grinned at Xylian, the Chrono Keeper, before gesturing his hand to the cardboard box on the floor and explaining his intention. Can you please take this kid in your hand and teach him how to control his power? He has time power just like you, but he cannot control it. Ah, I see, most interesting. Xylian laughed heartily while stroking his beard. I don't know how much I can help, but I will do my best. Hearing that, Gasper took a peek at Xylian from inside the cardboard box, and saw the Keeper of Time smiling warmly at him in response. The damper nervously looked back at him in response, but he couldn't bring himself to freak out anymore. Naruto smiled and nodded his head. Thanks, Gramps. And so for the next few days, Gaspar got to train with Xylian, who taught him how to control his emotions and in turn his power as well as the physiology of time, something that Naruto didn't know if he could truly understand or not. Still, with Xylian's patience and kindness, it did not take it long for Gaspar to start warming up to him, allowing his training with the Keeper of Time to go smoother with each passing day. It was also thanks to the selfless efforts of Zenovia and Kaneko, who could be seen randomly chasing the poor damper around the academy either with Durandal or a bunch of garlics after school, with them both reasoning that a healthy spirit starts from a healthy body, something that was essential if one wanted to control their sacred gear, that allowed Gaspar to make a significant progress with his sacred gear. The damper was still shy and timid, but at least he showed more confidence whenever a member of the club was talking to him, Naruto included. Time flew, and it's finally the day of the long-awaited meeting between the leaders of the three factions. It was a beautiful morning. The sky was clear of cloud cover, the sun was shining brightly, and a gentle breeze blew through the city, causing the trees to sway lightly. It was the kind of day where most people would feel blessed to be alive. That morning, Naruto did everything he would have normally done. He woke up very early at 4, trained a little with a master of Runeterra, took a long shower to clear his mind of things, ate breakfast with his friends, parents and champions, and then prepared himself for the possibly most important event in the history of the world. As usual, Rias had decided that they would wear their school uniform, but Naruto had a little something different in mind. "Naruto, we're here, are you ready?" Rias asked as she knocked her hand on the door of his room. "Yes, please come in." The blonde replied, allowing his girlfriend to walk in with Ravel and Asia following closely behind her, while the nun was hugging Yumi against her chest, finding Naruto standing in front of the full-body mirror in the room wearing his school uniform, but without its blazer. But as they walked closer to Naruto, Rias immediately noticed a jacket resting on the table next to him. The jacket looked very much like the ones he usually wore, with the difference being the hood at the top that was similar to the hoods on wizard robes. At the same time, the jacket also had the crest of the Institute of War on the back, with the circle surrounding the building now had the symbols of the recognized city-states of Runeterra, the homelands of his champions, starting with Bandle City of the Yordle, Bilgewater the lawless haven of smugglers and pirates, the strong and lawful kingdom Demacia, the harsh and unforgiving land of Freljord, the home of unspoiled magic and natural magic Ionia, the fearsome and powerful empire known as Noxus, the thriving city of Progress Piltover, the district of Iron and Glass Zon, the mountain of myth, and the gods themselves Tagan, the corrupted realm that was known as the Shadow Isles, the rising deserted empire Shurima, and ending with the last, but not least, the force of insatiable hunger in life. Devouring dimension, the void. Seeing the look of amazement Rias and Asia were both giving to his new jacket, Naruto picked it up and showed it to them. "Gwen made it for me on the request of the High Summoner of the League. Since I'm one of them now, they want me to be recognized as a member of the Institute of War and the Summoner of the League of Legends in this world." "I see." Rias smiled as Naruto put the jacket on, as glowing runes appeared on his sleeves and shone brightly for a second before disappearing. Having seen Naruto studying and using them before, Rias was able to recognize those to be the runes of summoners, which would allow him to summon his champions in a number of different ways. "It looks good on you, Naruto," she praised, with Yumi and Asia nodding their heads repeatedly in agreement. Ravel, meanwhile, just crossed her arms and said nothing, but he had a feeling that she agreed with them too. "Thanks, Bucho." Naruto smiled before he asked as he adjusted his collar. "All right, I'm ready. Let's go." That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.